our guest speaker, Naturopath Nathan, this evening. So Nathan is a naturopath, a herbalist and nutritionist. He has been practicing for about 15 or so years. And not only is he a practitioner, he's also a big researcher. So anybody on the call who knows Nathan will know that Nathan will not put his name to anything. He will not speak to anything with authority unless he has done a lot of research. And I know that he has spent many hours researching what he's going to be speaking about today. So rest assured, if it's coming out of Nathan's mouth, then he has done his research. So what we're going to do this evening is Nathan is actually going to do a bit of an overview for people who may not know much about mature hop bitter extract yet, and he's going to share with you a little bit about why that is so beneficial in fat loss. And then he is going to cover some of the questions that have been coming in about how this works and who can use it, etc. He's just going to start this evening with a quick overview of the mature hop bitter extract and how it works and its benefits for all of us in fat loss. Thank you, Nathan, and thanks again everybody for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much for the intro. I'll just let a bunch more people in. So yeah, honestly, this extract is the gift that just keeps giving. The more I look at this, the more I am amazed at just what it's doing. And so I'd love to give you a bit of a visual of what we're going to go through, because not everyone can really understand it as just hearing it. But when you see it, you get a much better picture of it. So we're talking about the mature hop bitter extract. And the amazing thing about this is we have a product that has this in it. And it is different than any other hop product out there. Most hops are used from either an ethanol extraction, and that is completely different than what we're getting with a proprietary extraction. We are getting some of these trichomes that contain these bitter acids concentrated, unlike anything else out there. And so it's these bitter acids, the combination of 3 different types of them, that are about to give us these amazing benefits that I'm going to run through. So thanks, Jolene, for putting this really cool infographic together. So that's what I'm going to be covering. I'll be covering it quite quickly because we went over a lot of this previously. I've got some new stuff that I'd love to go over with you and then answer your questions. So when we consume the hop extract, that's all the stuff that it's doing. It's releasing different gut peptides. It's increasing our thermogenesis. It's helping with digestion. It's slowing down the gastric emptying, so we feel fuller for longer. It then speeds up the transit of the bowels with peristalsis. And even there's a lot of cognitive anxiety, inflammation, and cardiovascular benefits that this extract, the research is showing, is beneficial for. So when you eat a bitter compound, it binds onto these receptors, the enteroendocrine cells in our gut, and that sends a signal through our vagus nerve to our brain that says, you've just eaten a bitter compound, let's slow everything down, digest it properly. So we're going to get the pancreas and the gallbladder jump on and give us a hand doing that. We're going to get our different peptides to tell our brain that we don't need any more food right now, so we're not hungry right now. Let's just focus on digesting these bitter acids. And then we're going to get a bunch of other peptides released. Cholecystokinin, glucagon-like 1 peptide, and peptide YY. So these are going to stimulate different areas of the body. It's going to help the pancreas, the liver, it's going to help the digestion, so the stomach, and it's going to help our brain release different neurotransmitters. So this is a lot of what happens when our body releases cholecystokinin. So again, I've just spoken about that, but that's, if anyone wants more detail, they can go back and pause this and read that. But there are all the benefits: digestive aid, the pancreatic enzyme release, the gastric emptying, it's regulating our appetite, it's helping with motility with that peristalsis, and it's helping with the neurotransmitter release with anxiety. So that's all from cholecystokinin that's released when we consume the bitter acids. So you may have had practitioners that have helped stimulate your vagal nerve through using different machines. And that's, really effective at calming down our fight or flight system. So if you're really stressed and your body's in fight or flight, you can go pay a practitioner who can stimulate your vagal nerve to put you into rest and calm. But we now have an extract that is able to do something very similar. And the amazing thing is, when this vagal nerve is communicating back and forth with the gut and the brain, it's switching on our brown adipose tissue. And this has numerous benefits. I'm going to speak about two of them today. So the other benefit is cognitive improvement. So this is what really excites me. This is not just fat loss. This is health. It is reversing a whole bunch of problems associated with visceral fat, helping mitigate some of the inflammation, and helping with cognitive performance. That's what the studies are showing. Now, when we look at the glucagon-like 1 peptide, some of the drug variants of this, like Manjaro, or what's the other one? Ozempic, have a lot of side effects. And when we use something that's from nature, that our body has been around for thousands of years and it knows exactly how to metabolize it and what to do with it, we get all the amazing benefits of stimulating our own glucagon-like 1 peptide within our body. We're helping with appetite suppression, we're improving our blood glucose control. This, along with cholecystokinin, is also slowing down gastric emptying. And this has some potential cardiovascular benefits. The more research that's done, the more we can understand what's going on. But so far, what they've done is very promising. Now, the other thing that's not really spoken about that often is peptide YY. This is a pancreatic peptide. So again, we are secreting this. It's working synergistically with the glucagon-like 1 peptide at helping with appetite reduction. And it's helping with both cholecystokinin and glucagon-like 1 peptide to help with our digestive regulation. But this also has a benefit of its own, and that is having a role in maintaining our gut microbiome. So that's also really exciting because we do know the gut microbiome is really at the center of all of our health. We need our gut to be working, our stress to be down, sleeping, for us to be healthy. So I'm really excited that we've got something that can start to target some of these key areas. So I came across an endorsement from a medical doctor who has some, I believe, Nobel Prize has been maybe not awarded, but is it, what's the word?
It was nominated.
Nominated, thank you. Nominated. And this is a very technical sentence where he talks about Adafite, a patent-pending extract of hops containing alpha acid oxides and other extracts inducing thermogenesis in brown adipose tissue via specific targeting of PGC1 alpha expression in brown adipose tissue, mediated by our beta adrenergic signaling cascade via our brown adipose tissue and sympathetic nervous system activation. He goes on to give you lay terms, but who else would like that translated into English? Because the lay terms that he says, where it increases metabolism in brown fat, is just like, and that's the tip of the iceberg. It does it. There's so much justice that needs to be given to just this one mechanism that I wanted to give you a bit of a visual of understanding just how kick-ass this is, what's actually happening. So here's typically the process, right? We have visceral fat and we have nutritional fat. And we don't really have control if we're taking different medications or different supplements as to which one we're going to lose. You could lose structural fat and look quite gaunt in the face. You could lose nutritional fat and start to get depleted. It's very rare you come across something that is quite specifically targeting visceral fat, the bad fat, the bum, tummy, thigh fat that everyone struggles to get rid of. You can actually be quite healthy, go to the gym often, eat really well, but you're still carrying that, this the saddlebags, whatever they call them, on the sides, around that tummy area, the last bit of fat to go. After everything else is gone, it finally goes. So when we are breaking down fat, we are breaking it down into fatty acids. And fats are really important for our body, the good fats. But unfortunately, a lot of the bad fat, like triglycerides, cause a lot of oxidation and inflammation. It's where a lot of metabolic disease comes from, inflammatory disorders, when we're carrying too much visceral fat. So if we can actually break this fat down into the safer, better quality fats like fatty acids, that then travel through our bloodstream and our body can use them to generate hormones, neurotransmitters, replenish all the fat that our brain needs. We're made up a lot of good fat. Then we start to be in repair mode. So it's not about weight loss, it's about repair mode and breaking down fat correctly in a safe manner. So this is a good visual where usually when our body is requiring energy or we're cold, it will get a little bit of fat from somewhere. It will break it down into the bloodstream. It'll send it to different areas like the muscles or the heart, or our fat cells or brown adipose fat. And the mitochondria in there, they grab on, this is our little energy centers, and they grabs onto the fatty acids, turns it into something called acetylcholine, and throws it into something called Krebs cycle, which is like a big furnace of making energy. And so when we have this process happening, imagine we have this little train filled with a bunch of fatty acids on the way through our blood system, going to where it needs to get to. It gets to our, let's say, fat, for example. And then you have a picture of this guy here shoveling in the fatty acids into the furnace, the mitochondria, and now we're producing some energy. Or we might be producing heat, depends on what the body needs. If we're producing heat, we're using a lot more of these fatty acids. If we're producing just energy, we don't use as many of them. So this is typically what happens when you're losing weight. It's a slow process and it can come from anywhere. This is what happens when you use mature hops bitter extract. All of a sudden, things are supercharged. We have an increase in mitochondria, and that's what that sentence is talking about. So the PCG1 alpha gene, what that's doing is it's stimulating more mitochondria to be made. So that's the picture on the right. You've got more furnaces being available for fat to be shoveled into. It's not only increasing the ability to burn more fat, it's doing it more efficiently. So now for every one guy shoveling in the fat, it's like having 10 of them because they're more efficient than the way our body would normally do it if we're not being stimulated through that mechanism that the bitter hops is doing. Along with having more mitochondria to shovel more fatty acids into, being more efficient at it, we just have more fat being broken down and the ability to condense the fat as it's being transported and bring more of it to the brown adipose tissue specifically. And because it's doing that, we are unlocking the ability to switch our mitochondrial furnaces. So instead of just making ATP, we're predominantly getting them to burn the fatty acids, oxidize them technically, into heat. So we are bringing far more fatty acids, we're more efficient, and because we're generating heat, we're using a lot more of them. And so this is where I love the analogy that using this extract, squirting it into that beverage, the water, whatever liquid you want, I suggest and recommend water, then we are all of a sudden having this process occur and ramping things up. Not only helping digestion, calming our nervous system down, the long-term benefits of potential cognitive effects, we are ramping the effect of burning this fat. And if you would rather sit in an ice bath for hours upon hours to have a similar process happen, because when we get cold, we have thermogenesis occur. Now you can just squirt that in your drink and you have a non-shivering thermogenesis, a very similar effect without having to sit in an ice bath. So I don't know who's in for that. You want to be on this train or you want this train? For me, it's the second one, along with all those amazing benefits. So that was a very quick rundown on some of the cool stuff we spoke about last time. but just breaking down just how awesome what he's saying here, what Dr. Joseph is mentioning, and then and what that actually means as a bigger picture. So I hope that actually helps it make more sense for you.
So the first question, Nathan, that was asked, people have been asking about the preservatives that are being used to preserve this product. Now, my understanding is that the preservatives amounts are so minuscule that they actually don't need to even be listed on the label, but they are, but people are still concerned about them. So Nathan, could you please share with us what the preservatives are and your thoughts on them, please?
Sure, and I'm going to have to get confirmation the percentage of how much is used and compare that with what the studies show is safe. But the first one, niacin, which is not niacin, like B vitamin, NiSIN, it's actually a natural preservative fermented from Lactococcus lactis, which is a bacteria. So we get this bacteria and it produces this substance, and it is really good at being a preservative. The generally recognized as safe, and I've found you could have up to 250 milligrams per kilo. So that's a crazy amount. Like if you times 250 by 100 kilos, that's 25 grams, and you wouldn't. There'd be such a tiny amount in our liquid until I get the information. But it does say that it's generally safe with pregnancy. And the other preservative, the sodium metabisulfate, also generally recognized as safe. So that's a GRAS classification that FDA and TGA and all the food organizations around the world have agreed upon. And this one can be used up to 10 to 2,000 milligrams per kilo. And the purpose of that is to act as an antioxidant. So it's actually anytime oxygen gets in, it's making sure the oxygen is not oxidizing the product and damaging it. And so what I have found with this one, if you do tend to have asthma and breathing difficulties, and you have issues with other sulfide foods, then you may have an issue with this preservative in very high amounts. So it's not actually the preservative that's the issue, it's the sulfite in it. But that will be a very similar problem if you have an issue with sulfite foods. And if you have heavy metals, I've seen that there's an interaction that makes you more susceptible as well, having very high amounts of some heavy metals. So it could be a sign if you eat certain foods with that preservative in there and you have a reaction, maybe worth going and getting heavy metals checked out. So hopefully that answers that question. By the time we look at how much is in there, they're quite safe with a very few percentage of people that can't have them in high amounts.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate that. And there are some other interesting questions coming through as well. So the next question is, would this product remove healthy fat in a smallish, slim person? Or would it deal with any underlying medical issues that may be present? So it's like a two-pronged question there.
Yeah, the great thing about taking something natural is you're not forcing a receptor with a drug to be forced labor, let's say. Instead, your body is releasing its own gut peptides, and those gut peptides are interacting with the vagus nerve and your brain, and they are the ones that are sending the signals to regulate the body. So if you didn't have much weight to lose, in my eyes, the body would just start using the other pathways to benefit other areas of the body, and it would not use more fat than it needed and put the body into a deficit. So there would be a built-in protection mechanism where the body would just downregulate that. And would it deal with any underlying medical issues? That's like such a massive topic. But again, if you look at the benefits that we spoke about, how it's helping with the sympathetic nervous system go from fight or flight to calm and rest, and it is increasing the ability for the body to have better digestion. It's supporting the microbiome. There's potential for cognitive function and reducing inflammation. If you look up most medical issues, they all start from the gut inflammation, insulin resistance, and not digesting. So if you're able to fix those areas, That's what I do as a naturopath. It's like, you've got this problem, let's go fix the underlying areas: gut, liver, stress, lack of sleep, toxicity. And usually you're a head start on fixing that specific problem that they've got. So we can't say yes, but that's just my train of thought on that question.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathan. So the next question is the product okay to take with while being on HRT? And may I add into that pregnancy and breastfeeding too, please? Because they've been commonly asked as well.
So with HRT, so the regular hop extract, because it contains flavonoids, they have a phytoestrogen activity and can interact with hormones, but the bitter acids do not contain flavonoids. So there is no interaction with hormones. So if you are on HRT, again, you always have to check exactly which one you're on, what enzyme that the liver is using to metabolize it, and check if it's safe. And I'll have to pop some links in how to do that, but I couldn't find anything else of the enzymes that our hops is using being interlinked with HRT. In terms of pregnancy, the regular hop extract, when you look up the data on that, it does not recommend using hop with estrogen breastfeeding. But again, that's because it contains that phytoestrogen activity, whereas the bitter acids doesn't. So there's no yet research saying it is safe, but there's no alert saying that, oh, we've already found something that says you can't do it. They just haven't proven that it's safe yet.
But it wouldn't make sense to a novice like me to be attempting to release fat while you're pregnant anyway. So I think that's
No, it's never a good time to try and do something
a
like
bit
that.
of a common sense question, that one. Yeah. Okay, next question, Nathan. We have a sister with intellectual and physical disabilities currently on medication for epilepsy and high blood pressure.
So with the high blood pressure, so there was some concern about using, if they're on beta blockers, for example. So before we spoke about the brown adipose tissue and that sympathetic nervous activity, how it's like doing that train analogy, that's sort of stimulated through the beta adrenergic system receptors. We have 3 of them. The one in our brown adipose tissue uses the receptor number 3. The beta blockers, typically, if they're selective, will block the receptor 2, and a non-selective beta blocker will block receptors 1 and 2. So because we are using it within our receptor 3 fat, the beta blockers, thankfully, will not interact with shutting that mechanism down. In terms of other medication, again, it's difficult to comment on if it will react without knowing each medication's liver enzyme pathway. But when you look at what is it actually doing, the glucagon-like 1 peptide is helping to lower blood pressure. It's relaxing the blood vessels, and it's helping to put you into a state of rest and calm. So I see a bit of a synergistic effect with using that and some of the conditions to help, but you'd have to make sure that the doctor is notified and that you're monitoring yourself or that, was it your sister, to make sure that it's safe for her to do so.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nathan. And I think once again, common sense is if you have a medical condition of some sort, that it is good advice to contact your medical practitioner. But the next question, is it good for cognitive function? And before you answer that, Nathan, I was in on a call this morning in the States where people have been using this product for a couple of months now. And there was a beautiful old gentleman in his 80s who had been taking the product, and he did release some body fat, which he was wanting to do, but he listed off a whole bunch of other things, and we're not making therapeutic claims. And he kept saying, I am not making a therapeutic claim, but this is the only thing I've done differently in my regime. And he was saying that it really helped with his cognitive function. You know, things were clearer. He had more, more clarity. He just remembered things. And, being in his 80s, that was really, really good to hear, because I'm only in my 60s and I could certainly do with some help there. So, Nathan, over to you for your more official answer there, please.
Well, they've actually done studies on humans with the extract, and they found that it does improve cognitive performance, especially with attention and memory. And most of those cognitive benefits are going to come through the activation of dopamine neurotransmission in the brain. So we have this thing called hippocampus, and that's all about dependent memory. And the prefrontal cortex is associated with the cognitive functions, like the doing. And so if you can support those two things, the study concluded that there was benefits in those areas. And the great thing about having the vagus nerve stimulated is we have a VTA. I forget what the acronym is referring to, but the vagus nerve stimulates this VTA system, which is an area in the brain's reward system. And so even having emotional regulation, motivation and reward processing, that I think is going to be beneficial for anxiety. So they are doing anxiety trials with that as well. So it's not just for cognition, it's for mood regulation too.
That's really, really good news. I don't know if anybody else can relate. If you're in your like 50s or 60s, it really does decline, doesn't it? And it's quite scary. So if that can help, that is a big plus for me. So another good question, Nathan, can someone who is actually allergic to hops have the drops?
Again, we've got to look at why is someone allergic to hops, and usually the main allergenic component in the hop that they're reacting to are glycoproteins. And so because we're using bitter acids, they don't have glycoproteins from what I could read. And so if we've got different chemical compounds that aren't glycoproteins, and that's why people are usually allergic to hops, then I didn't find any evidence that the people who are going to be allergic to these glycoproteins from the hop flour are going to have the same issue with a extract pulled out of the hop that is not glycoprotein related. So again, you've got to do it under supervision, take small amounts, and be somewhere where you can get help if you did have a reaction. But yeah, from what I can see, you'd have to, yeah, I don't want to say yes, but hopefully that answers the question.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nathan. And of course, Nathan's done some research on this, but it doesn't mean, that you don't do your own due diligence as well, with these sort of more medical type questions. But another question was, how long can you continue taking this for fat loss?
Well, all the studies ran for 12 weeks. They noticed no reduction in the efficacy of the product. So it's not like they got to week 6 and then the fat loss slowed down. It maintained for the entire 12 weeks. So the studies are showing that it's safe for at least 12 weeks. It's no one has done a study longer than that yet, but it has a very good safety profile. And so I would say that if you're on it for 12 weeks, it's probably a good time to take a small break. And I guess that is one thing that we can speak of next is, should you take a break? If it was safe to continually be on, should you do that anyway? I would prefer someone, if they've been on it for at least 12 weeks, to have a break, because if you are losing a lot of weight, that visceral fat is stored toxins. Your body created the visceral fat in the first place to deal with the toxins that your liver could not process and remove. So where are all these toxins going when you are breaking down the visceral fat? They're floating around and your liver is having to deal with them. This is why I really recommend before you even start doing this, you clear out your metabolic pathways first. And therefore, when you do break down the visceral fat, your pathways are already clear or clearer, and you're not going to have as many hiccups along the way as you're breaking down the fat. Once you have broken down the fat, do the same thing again. There's a whole lot of more metabolic waste floating around. Let's get that out, clean it up, and then jump back on and help the body continue the process.
Once again, that makes really good sense, doesn't it? Absolutely. So how long can you stay on it? You've answered that. Do you need to take a break? You've answered that. So what happens to your body when you stop taking it? Will you put the weight back on? And this is a really good question, because I have shared on some other calls that I used another protocol from both Nathan and my friend Robin, who's also a naturopath, that they were similar protocols and they worked. Like I did it for 10 weeks and it worked. But I've got to tell you, excuse me, it was bloody hard. It was a really strict, restrictive diet that meant I couldn't go out. I couldn't, have lunches. It was like so restrictive. It was really hard, and it worked. However, after all of that hard work of being on it for like up to 10 weeks and releasing 10 kilos, then even though I felt like I was still eating reasonably afterwards and exercising reasonably, I still just kept putting the weight back on. Now, this has happened more for me personally in my 60s, because I've always been quite a fine build, but I've really struggled, in the last 5 years or so to really just keep the weight off. So I, for one, am super excited about seeing how this will not only help to release the fat, but to help keep it off. So Nathan, I'm really excited to hear what you're going to say about this question.
Well, I believe that the extract should be your reason to get you out of where you're stuck with no energy, no motivation, waking up tired every day, thinking I've done so many things previously that have failed, I've given up. Your body's given up. When this starts to give you your results, use that as fuel, as motivation to have more energy to get your health back on track. It should not be used as a cheat to be drinking alcohol and eating bad foods and not put on weight and slightly lose some weight. It should be used as an excuse to get your bum into gear and get your health much better than it's ever been before. So what happens if your body stops taking it? It depends what you're doing. If you have not changed your eating patterns, your lifestyle habits, if you're going to bed really late, you're getting really bad sleep, you're not moving at all, you're still eating bad food, yeah, you've lost the weight, but you're going to put that back on because you're still eating the wrong foods, you're not getting sleep, you're still inflamed. Now, it is different to something like the other glucagon-like 1 peptide drugs that we spoke of before, where they're only targeting that one mechanism. The hot bitter extract is targeting many different mechanisms within the body for more restorative long-term regeneration. So again, I'll have to say you've got a far better chance after coming off this of having a bunch of things corrected within the body while you've been on it. That should give you a huge head start to making that decision to do what we just spoke of, like doing more and more for your health. And someone was saying, what about, what sort of detox method? There's so many different detox methods, but just something as simple as drinking enough water and having enough fiber that you're going to the toilet at least 2 or 3 times a day. I've done so many detox protocols being a naturopath, and unfortunately they all taste disgusting. I have a naturopathic supplement company, RecoverDapt, and I make a supplement for liver detox, supporting the spleen, kidneys, lymphatics, a little bit of bowel support, and I made it very palatable. It helps the liver break down the toxins safely. But that's just like the bare minimum. The water is the most important thing. When you break down the fat, guess what happens? Where does it go? You pee it out. Majority of the time you pee the ketones out. So if you're not drinking enough water, that's the key thing. You need to be drinking a lot of water.
And good healthy water, I would imagine, not tap water, bottled water, etc.
Exactly, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, just this isn't a question that I've got written down here, but just to add on to that, what happens when you stop taking it. So we have had some questions in here too about how long does it last in the body? How many servings should you take a day? Because it's a tiny little snap that you just snap into your drink. Now, we have been told you can take 1 or 2 snaps a day. So that it's meant to have work in your body for 9 or 9.5 hours. And please, Nathan, jump in if I'm saying something incorrectly. So you can take either 1 or you can take 2. So if you're wanting to either move or help to release the fat a little bit faster, you can take 2. I'm probably not using the right terminology. And what I'm getting to is when you may be down to a weight or a body size that you're more comfortable with, then maybe could you only take it every few days, or maybe just on the weekends when you may be going out and dining out and having an alcoholic beverage or something, or maybe when you go on that cruise or on that holiday. So it can be used ongoing. but not necessarily needing to take that 1 or 2 a day. What are your thoughts on that?
Depends what your purpose of using it for. If you're using it to try and restore gut health, or you're using it as a way for cognitive improvement, that's
Stay on
something
it.
we
Yeah.
stay. But
Okay.
if your goal was predominantly just trying to get into a healthier weight range where you're more comfortable, then if you don't have that much weight to lose and you don't have any of the other issues we spoke about before with inflammation, lack of sleep, stress, you've done detoxing before, one is probably enough per day. But if you've got like a lot of inflammation, a lot of gut health issues, you're heavily stressed, you've got a lot of weight to release, a lot of fat to release, then probably two is going to help get things moving quicker to the point where your motivation is high enough that if you dropped it back to one, you would still continue. So it's all to do with your motivation and how quick you need to see results to stick with it.
Because my thought pattern was to start off with 2 a day. And I don't have a huge, I've got about 5 or 6 or 7 kilos to release, but it's really more about the body fat, not necessarily the scales. So my thinking was to do 2 a day and then maybe just see how I feel or go on that, then perhaps drop back from there. But
We
we
won't
might,
know until we all get it and try it.
yeah, yeah,
All of this is based on science, clinical studies, the biochemistry of the body, how things are working when you ingest it.
yeah,
The actual use of the product is going to be different once we get it, and a whole bunch of us are going to be using it. I'm already speaking with a clinic where we will start testing everyone's, well, not everyone's, the people we can, their body fat percentage, their muscle mass, their cell age, and all the measurements, so we can do like before and afters. And then we're going to have a lot more personal data, and we'll know the protocols. We don't know the protocols yet because we haven't got it, so they will only be created through using it.
Actually, talk a little bit more about that VLA, Nathan, because I think anyone who's on the Gold Coast here, anyone who's on the Gold Coast, we're possibly going to be making that available for people to come and have all of that tested. So what does VLA stand for and what does it do exactly?
It's a tool Metagenics created, so it stands for Vitality, Longevity, and Anti-Aging. So it uses bioimpedance, like a more simple DEXA scan. Sometimes you may have gone to the gym and they've had those things where you stand on and they take all the measurements and give you a printout. So it's very similar to that. You put these diodes on the hands and the feet, and it sends signals throughout the tissues of the body, and that gets put into a program where you pop in your weight and your height and a bunch of other details, and it gives you a nice printout of like what your current body mass is, what your muscle mass is, what your fat percentage is, how the quality of your phase angle, and how well the nutrients are likely to come in and out of the cell, how hydrated you are, your age versus your biological versus your cell age. So it's a decent, like, nice little report, and doing that with the really thorough measurements and using an app. What I think you've downloaded the app, something 360, would be a really good way of tracking.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. And I think also not just getting on the scales prior, but actually getting the tape measure out and measuring, all of the different aspects of the body, because that's where we notice it, isn't it? When with our clothes, our pants get looser, or we can get a dress on or something that we couldn't get on before, or we notice the roly-poly bits at the back are gone. So measuring, I think, is a great idea. The scales are not really the most accurate indicator, but it's still nice to see the scales go down. I've got to say, it's quite motivating still to see that go down.
Yeah, and I guess when we do take a break, I would say if you're, again, quite healthy already and you only need to lose a couple of kilos, then 1 week is probably enough to do like a quick mini detox. But if you have a lot of weight to lose and got a lot of those health concerns, I'll be more inclined to do a 3-week break and detoxify over that period and then jump back in.
That's great advice. Thank you, Nathan. Really appreciate that. Next question. I was wondering how the skin might be impacted with rapid weight loss.
So this one was a tricky one. I had to really dig to find some credible information on it. But one of the bitter extracts in hops, xanthumol, can potentially help with saggy skin because it's been shown to stimulate the production of collagen. And we need collagen for the elasticity and firmness of the skin. I would for sure be adding in a collagen peptide for skin product along the way with things like vitamin C to help our body create that elasticity back in the skin.
Perfect, because I know that with weight loss, that is an issue, isn't it? You get the saggy skin and so forth. So if that would even help a little bit, that would be super, super great. And also, I know when some people release a lot of weight, it really ages their face. And I think that's another thing that's exciting about this, is because, especially for us who are a little bit older, if we do tend to release body fat, then it does actually age us and it shows on our face. So if it can help with that, it's another thing I'm excited about. So lots of pluses for me here tonight. Thanks, Nathan. Okay, 4 more questions, Nathan, and we may not have time for any off the panel because we've got about 10 minutes left. So someone with autoimmune disease, what benefits might be possible?
So again, no claims can be made, but when I think of autoimmune, I do a lot of microbiome analysis of the gut. And when they have a panel, we can actually test to see if you have any autoimmune triggering bacteria. And so what does that tell you? It tells you the gut is extremely important in this process. Our immune system is predominantly located in our gut. So what do we have that can help with the gut? The microbiome, breaking food down better. So when you start to look at that and the fact that it's calming down our nervous system, our stress, we have some antioxidant benefits and reducing inflammation. So you pop all those things together, you answer the question yourself. Do you think that by doing that, you're going to help with autoimmune disease?
I like that way of putting it. Thank you. Awesome. So another one about medication. Will it work with synthyroid or thyroxine medication?
Again, the study that I found was looking at rats where they were monitoring their TSH, T3, T4, so your thyroid stimulating hormone and the T3 and T4 hormones. And they noticed that when they were giving them hops, that we had a decrease in the TSH, T3, and T4. But that was due to the phytoestrogen activity of the hops that comes from the flavonoids. So again, bitter acids don't have flavonoids. They won't have this hormone activity. So there's been no study that specifically checked bitter acids from hops against thyroid medication, but that tells me that it's likely to be safe. Again, make sure you're with your practitioner, checking your T3, T4, and TSH before you start and during it, so you know for sure.
Absolutely. And I think that's crucial as well, Nathan, to be monitoring with your practitioner before, during, and after, if these are concerns. That, once again, it's kind of logical, isn't it? That does make sense. So there's a question about age limit for using this product.
Yes, before I go into the age limit, I'll just add on to like any other questions about drugs. So the two liver enzymes that are going to be impacted is cytochrome P450, 1A2, and 3A4. So if you Google P450 dash or space 1A2 or 3A4 and put that into Google and then look at WebMD or something with your drug. If your drug interacts with that CYP 1A2 or 3A4, then that sort of gives you the answer that this has the potential to make that drug work better or inhibit it. And then it's okay, now I need to go speak with my practitioner to make sure that I'm doing this safely. So I just wanted to add that on. When it comes to age limit, I had to go back and look at the actual hops and then look at something similar. And for example, the glucagon-like 1 peptide, like peptide 1. So they say it can be used for children, but because of the phytoestrogen activity, they recommended it that it was over 18 years old. So anything under 18, because of the phytoestrogen activity, they wanted to make sure that you didn't do it. That made it difficult because then with the bitter extract, we don't have that issue. And with the extremely safe profile, yeah, I just couldn't find anything either way. There's nothing saying you can't do it, but that, sorry, I said 18, I meant 10 years old. So I'll pop that link in the Facebook group so you can see there's a link from the FDA approving for children 10 and above with type 2 diabetes using this particular drug. That's as close as I can get to answering that. 10 and above, and if you're on your own and you're not seeing a practitioner, I would have to say 18 and above.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. And the other question, I think the last question that we have here is, what about beta blockers?
Yeah, so as mentioned previously, most beta blockers target the beta 1 and beta 2 adrenal receptors. But because the beta 3 are the ones found in fat cells, they're typically not blocked by beta blockers. But the great thing about the hops extract is even if once our body is releasing the neurotransmitter, norepinephrine, usually at that point, the beta blocker would shut it down and stop it binding onto these beta adrenergic receptors that then go and tell the brown adipose tissue to do that bigger train and more efficient analogy. We have a backup system within this extract where it's actually using the isoalpha acids, and they can act as ligands that bind to these PPAR receptors. And what that does, that is the one that switches the mitochondria to start using the heat instead of the ATP. So we're burning more of these lipids through thermogenesis. So yeah, even if that pathway was shut down, we have another way of doing it. And it's really impressive when you look at what PPAR activation can do. It's even like converting the white adipose tissue into beige fat. So not only is it ramping up our good brown adipose tissue, it's converting some of our white fat into beige fat. So it can have a similar property to the brown adipose tissue and increase the ability for us to burn even more of those fats and generate heat.
Oh,
And PPAR is all about lipid metabolism. So it's increasing the amount of fatty acids that we can uptake and throw on the train and oxidize, burn them off. So it's helping to reduce that visceral fat accumulation and helping with the inflammation at the same time.
wonderful, Nathan. Just another quick question that might be related from Lynn. What about blood thinners?
So again, you'd have to look at, does the blood thinner act on CYP 1A2 or 3A4? And if it did, you'd have to have caution. But because mature hop bitter extracts are not thinning the blood, unlike things like turmeric and ginger, for example, we're going to be cautious because then you're having too much of a blood thinning action and risk of bleeding. We're not approaching that mechanism. So I haven't specifically researched that one yet, Lynn. But again, we're not thinning the blood. So it comes into, is the bitter extract like any other herb or spice that we're consuming daily and in other supplements that are totally fine with blood thinners? They don't affect the thinning of the blood. And if they don't affect those two liver enzymes, then that's as much as I can say as it being safe.
Awesome. Thank you, Nathan.
You really do need to go back to the doctor, but you've got to rely upon the doctor taking the time to look it up rather than saying no.
Which
They
they
usually
probably
say no.
won't.
They don't, can't be bothered. It's very time intensive to look things up. And then if the doctor says yes, now it's on them if something happens and they just don't want to take the responsibility.
Thank you, Nathan, for taking that time. Nathan is the type of person who won't just say what he thinks just randomly. He has to make sure that he understands it, and he does understand the human body very well. But of course, he's had to learn about this particular extract and how it does affect the body, not only for fat loss, but we're hearing other positive benefits as well. We always have to reiterate again that we are not making any therapeutic claims, that everybody's results are individual and different. and that because somebody gets a result, it doesn't mean somebody else will.